when you're the new kid on the block and you want to win people over and get noticed, sometimes the easiest thing to do is to, well, follow the herd, imitate your peers, because after all, they've obviously been doing something right to make them successful. Take this Genesis G70 for example. Now Genesis is a relatively new brand, so how is it going to win people over with its compact executive sports saloon? Well, it's going to do it by imitating which is pretty much all the other cars in its class, such as the BMW 3 Series, the Audi A4 and the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, because they've been very successful at what they do. It's a sporty, luxury, compact 3-box saloon that has very minimal chrome on it, big darkened alloys and brass kind of paintwork that every young thrusting executive will want. It sort of says that I'm on the way up and woe betide anybody that gets in my way. But what about those people who are already there? What about the people who no longer are on that trading floor, that no longer have to take all the bullshit arse kickings from the regional sales director? They've had their fill of the trawling up and down the motorways of Britain and Little Chef breakfast that they can take. They've already made it. Do Genesis make a car for them? Well, the simple answer is yes, they do. And this is it. A car for people who no longer need to follow that herd. A car for people who have reached the top of their game. A car for people who tread their own path. And what's better? It's fully electric. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Genesis Electrified G80. And as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get on to this week's road test review of the new Genesis Electrified G80, can I please ask you to make sure you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel. And then once you've done that, if you press the little bell button that's down below, you'll be notified of when our next video goes live. Once you watch the video, if you do enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments down below, good or bad. Let us know how we're doing as a channel and let us know your thoughts on the cars that we review. Now, by now, most people are probably aware of who Genesis are, but for those of you who maybe don't, let me just kind of explain. You see, a few years back, the Genesis was the sort of high-end luxury Hyundai. It was a model within Hyundai's own range, the Hyundai Genesis. But now it's a separate brand, and it's a bit like Lexus is to Toyota. There is a sharing of commonality of engineering and certain sort of hard points and running gear as such, but in terms of the style and the marketplace that they position themselves in, it is very separate to the Hyundai and sister brand Kia as well. We've seen quite a lot of product from them in quite a short space of time. Obviously you saw at the beginning we had the G70, their compact sports saloon. They brought out earlier this year the compact crossover all-electric car, the GV60, which we've road tested and really do like. There's the the GV70 SUV, which they're also going to do an electric version of, which we'll hopefully be road testing very soon. And at the top of the range there's the G80 and the GV80 SUV. But in terms of their electric cars, as I say, there's just at the moment the GV60 compact crossover, the GV70 electrified SUV, and now this, an executive saloon. And I do say executive saloon, and I do mean, when I use the word luxury, I do really mean that, because they want a slice of pie that's been pretty much been the sort of like the wholesale consumption of the big luxury German brands such as BMW, Mercedes and Audi. People coming into this marketplace, well, they've sort of, I mean, it's taken a long time for Lexus to be taken seriously, and even Jaguar, that once proud British mark of executive sports saloons, they've pretty much all but thrown the towel in this market space. So what hope does Genesis have, a relatively unknown brand, of muscling into this territory and being taken more seriously by these premium buyers rather than being seen as a sort of upmarket sort of minicab? Well, as we're about to find out, the G80 is their first foray into this sector. Let's see if it's any good by putting it through the road test that actual car buyers trust to deliver the true definitive verdict, and that's the AutoEV one. Now, if you're a regular viewer, you'll know that we've already done a sneak peek with the Electrified G80 when we first came across it back in the summer at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. But now we have it for a full road test, it's worthwhile just going over some of the points that we covered then, and of course we're going to start with styling. Now this is a really important market sector, for, as I say, for people who are kind of wanting to show the world that they've kind of made it. But in this kind of world now where excess consumption is kind of frowned upon, there's an element of the sort of like the understated style that is a little bit more preferred, dare I suggest, and that's a little bit where some of the German brands aren't quite getting it right. I mean, let's be honest, BMW's styling of late is questionable, Mercedes you could possibly say a little bit bland, and Audi's a little bit, well, it's that kind of Russian doll-esque style, kind of just, you know, one sort of like size fits all. How does the Genesis do? Well, I think it, as I said before, it treads its own path. When you look at the likes of the Hyundai range with their Ioniq series, what they're trying to do with that, they're trying to make each one of the Ioniq members of that family kind of have their own distinct style. And they're sort of doing the same with Genesis, but they are giving them some commonality. And of course, the most obvious one is these kind of twin blade headlights, which are excellent at night. I really do like these headlights. And then, of course, there's the big front grille, which does need to be a grille. Now, you do get the G80 as an internal combustion engine car as well. So the electric one has all of this filled in. But it's quite a nice kind of pattern here for this crested grille that you get. And it also sort of like features this area here, which has a lot of the sensors for the front camera guided cruise control, little front camera embedded into there. And without doubt, the world's best camouflaged charging flap. Anybody guess what it is? Brilliant. Neatly integrated at the front, nice and easy to get to. I really, really like that. Absolutely fantastic. You've got cooling down at the bottom, obviously, as you'd expect, going in underneath the grille there, and then just sitting atop the bonnet, this proud big winged Genesis badge. Not unfamiliar to anyone who's maybe seen another kind of winged badge with a big B on it. On the whole, from the front, you can see the car is quite a kind of wide and squat kind of stance. It's got that kind of muscularity about it, but with a bit of elegance about it, as we will certainly see in its side profile. Because in side profile, you can see that what they've done is they've chased after the sort of elegant luxury side of things, rather than that faux sporting sort of like style that we saw with the G70 at the beginning of the episode. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, they've got their kind of sport, like kind of sub-brands, the M Sport, AMG line, S line. That's not for Genesis, and I commend them for that. I really like the fact that they are chasing a bit more kind of elegant luxury with this car. You've got a lot of chrome on it. You know, you get these twin sort of like strakes here, which hide the sort of like side turn indicators that mirror those twin blade headlights. Get a nice bit of chrome around the window line as well, and on the door handles. Really like that. These lovely, elegant 19-inch alloy wheels, which are unique on the electric model as well. And that's really the only way you can tell, apart from that front grille, that this is the electric model. But it's this line here that starts at the front, as it kind of sweeps around the bonnet line, and then just sort of like comes up, and then it just disappears into the door there, and then comes back out at the rear haunches. That's lovely. I like that there. It just kind of comes back out there, and it gives you a nice kind of shoulder line there. Talking of shoulder line, you've got this lovely kind of belt line that runs up from the front bonnet and carries all the way through the mirror, and then just kind of tapers off as it gets towards the rear of the car. And that's sort of then mirrored by this lovely kind of swooping roof line that flows into the rear of the car, almost kind of coupe-like. That does hurt the rear headroom a little bit, which we'll see in the practicality section, but on the whole, as I say, I think this is a really successful piece of design, and it does stand out for the right reasons in this market space. And as I say, you've got the swooping tail to the car, a window line that just comes down into this boot lid. It's not a hatchback. It does kind of look like it could be, but it's not. It's a booted saloon, and you've got this nice little kind of integrated kind of deck lid spoiler that just goes across there. Really like that. Like the front, mirrored at the back, you've got these twin strake headlights, as I say, that Genesis styling signature, and again, really nice rear end kind of light design on the car. Big, prominent Genesis lettering across the back end of the car, the small kind of G80 badge down there, no electric badge on it, which again is quite nice. I like the fact it doesn't shout about it, have been electric. The boot releases in this nice little chrome plinth across here, just a little button there that you just press and the boot pops up electronically. Parking sensors down here, and then of course your reflectors and your number plate down at the bottom. Little cameras embedded up in there as well for the boot release, and we'll talk about all the safety systems and equipment that comes on the car later on. As I say, I think it's a real It's not a beautiful looking car, it's a very elegant looking car. And I think it's a real testament to Genesis wanting to be different. As I say, they've not gone down that sort of like sporting look, and they've made it very distinctive. This car isn't going to be for everyone, and Genesis know that, and I quite like that. I quite like that bravery. But as I say, to me, this is a very elegant looking car, and it suits this market space well because, as I say, it stands out from all the others. What do you think? As always, let us know in the comments down below. However, as successful as it is with the styling, there are some downsides to the G80, and one of them is boot space. Now, it's not huge. It's 354 litres, and for such a large saloon, which is almost 5 metres long, that's quite small. Put it this way, a 5 Series BMW has over 500 litres, and even the new Mercedes-Benz EQE all-electric executive car comes in at 430 litres, so it is quite small. What you do have is this sort of raised section at the back here, unfortunately, because obviously there's some batteries located in there. The boot floor, well, that pops up, and you do get enough space under floor storage for your charging cables, and the car also comes with a vehicle to load adapter as well, which I'll talk about in the usability section. So in terms of what it will actually carry, well, it will take the suitcases, but you do have to be a bit sort of clever with them, because you've got to put one, there's a medium one, and we've got to put it kind of slightly tilted up at the back there, and then we put this one, large one, in there, and get one of our small ones just about here, and then that one down the side. And okay, there is a little bit more space here for bags and stuff, but for instance, if you were taking, I don't know, a set of golf clubs with you as well, which business people sometimes do play, they're not going to fit as well. So as I say, that is one of the downsides with the G80. And if you're thinking, ah, well, Brian, there's got to be some storage at the front because it's got such a big bonnet, it's such a big car, you're going to be in for a bit of a disappointment. Because underneath here, yeah, there's no storage in here, that's another motor. So yeah, Practicality's not its ace card. So rear seat space, how does it do for that? Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag if I'm honest with you. It's fine for me. I'm quite short, as you all know. This seat was set up for myself, but when you get out of the car it slides back. But actually I've still got enough knee room here. I would say that there's not a huge amount of foot room. That's the one thing about it, is there's not a huge amount of foot room. And again, although this seat is set quite low, there isn't a massive amount of weight and get my feet under. You can, but not for a huge amount. Where you're going to struggle a little bit is headroom. Now, as you know, I'm 5'7", maybe 5'8", who knows? And yeah, it's kind of sloping down. If I was 6 foot, my head would be against the roof lining in here. And you do feel, as I say, your legs are slightly pushed up. So in terms of its actual space, as I say, it's okay, but it's not perfect. But in terms of its comfort, it is very luxurious feeling back here. Everything's swathed. I mean, this particular car has quite a few options on it, which we'll talk about in the pricing section. But one, it's got the Napa leather as well. It's also got the executive pack and comfort seat pack, and that gives us these twin screens in the back here where you can kind of swipe through things and control media and navigation, and you can look at sports scores. Don't know why, but there you go. If you're interested, you can do it from these screens here, but as I say, they are part of the option pack, and they do sort of move as well, so they are movable. Now, as well as being controlled from the touch screen, if I turn around, you also get a big control pack here, which is quite nice. And I've also got heated rear seats on this. I've got a rear window blind which I can operate from here, and it has the same sort of like knurled control wheel that the driver has in the front, again for controlling things in here. Same with volume. So if you're being driven somewhere, you can control sort of like the media in the car. As I say, you've got heated back seats. You've also got the little window blinds in this car as well as part of the pack, which, as I say, we'll go on to, which I really like. That's quite nice, along with the rear screen. Gives a bit of privacy, and again, or if you've got children as well, obviously like I have, you've got the ISOFIX points, and as I say, obviously they've got the rear blinds which they can put up. There's also rear air conditioning as well, so there's it's a 4-zone climate control system, so you can control it in here. The only thing I'll say about this, oh, some storage as well, sorry, I should have mentioned that, there is some storage. The only thing I'll say about this, when you put it back, it doesn't seem to sit flush, which is a bit weird. It seems to just almost protrude slightly at the top. It feels like it should be able to be pushed back a bit further, and it doesn't. You know, it's not ideal. So yeah, I'd say that looks a little bit incongruous. You've got cup holders there, which flip out from the front there for the rear, and there is some door bins there, but they are quite shallow, so I would say they're probably not going to take much in terms of water bottles and things. You've got these airline style rigid seat backs, pockets on the backs of the front seats, and what you can do is from the rear seat you can control the position of the front passenger seat. So again, if you're being driven and you need more space, you can actually slide that forward, or even just use it to annoy whoever's sitting in the front passenger seat. So, as I say, a bit of a mixed bag in the practicality section. The boot isn't huge, it's okay, but it's way down on class best. Rear space is all right if you're short or a child, but if you're tall, you're going to struggle a little bit back here. Now up front, what you have is a cabin that is packed with technology without being overwhelming. There's no big kind of surprise and delight features here like you get the big twin screens of the smaller GV60 electric crossover, or the big hyper screen that Mercedes now do. And I think that's a good thing, because I think the type of buyer that's going to be looking at the G80 might be frightened by stuff like that. So I don't think it's so much of a bad thing that sort of like the look and the sort of like the technology is there, but it's quite hidden. Let me start by saying all the good things that I love about the interior of this car. The first thing is the driver instrumentation panel, which is a 12.3-inch digital cluster, which you can configure. It's got this lovely sort of 3D effect going on, which you can't really see from there, and you won't be able to really see on camera. But it's got this lovely sort of 3-dimensional effect going on in there, and I really like it. And depending obviously on what driving mode that you're in, and you select them from here, and when you go into, like, say, sport, the dials change and everything, you get red needles and all the sort of like different sort of things change around. And then when you go to eco, everything kind of pairs back and it looks very, very different. And then when you go back to kind of comfort mode, it's more of the kind of traditional style of instrument cluster. So I think it's really, really good. And you can configure the center display depending obviously on what you want to see. So you can see things like, you know, a compass, or if there's navigation on the go, it'll tell you where you're going, or you can have it so I've got it so it's the digital speedo, or you can have your battery information displayed there. So again, really, really nice, easy to configure, and everything's easy to see at a glance. You move across and you've got this wonderfully big 14.5-inch sort of landscape display here for the infotainment system. And the first thing I love about it is the fact it's in the line of sight. It's not down here, it's not this big incongruous screen here, it's up here. So it's just this, as you're driving, it's a quick glance across and you can see everything you need to see. It is touchscreen, but it is a bit of a stretch away in some respects, so you do get this sort of knurled controller, like I was saying, that the one in the back, so you can scroll through your menus using this. And obviously again on the smaller GV60, it has a similar style of thing here, which you can then sort of like go into depending obviously on what you want to see. You just click it to go into what you want to see. So there we go. Then you've got some physical buttons back here for back to take to the home screen as well. So obviously depending obviously on what you want, and then your menus there as well. You've got volume control here on this nice kind of scroll wheel, and then again for tuning the radio, for moving things around, is the same. The controls on the steering wheel are duplicated as well, so you've got volume and track selection there, or tuning, and then obviously you've got your, on this side is the cruise control buttons here. I'm not a big lover of Genesis steering wheels, if I'm honest with you. They're quite nice to hold in terms of, you know, they're round and they've got the right thickness, but the design's a bit, I'm not sure. I always thought the GV60 one, the spokes were too thick, and I think this one looks like it belongs in a 1990s Buick LeSabre. I just don't think it looks particularly nice, but this may be my point of view. Back to here, what else have we got? Well, you move down here and we've got some physical buttons along above the air conditioning controls. So again, shortcut buttons to get straight to your map, your navigation, your radio, your media players, your favourite buttons, so you can choose what's your favourite. You know, you need quick access to and set it up there. And then there's this setup button where you can go into all your different driver assistance modes and such things as that to change everything to your unique settings. So all good there. Below that, again, you've got a mixture of kind of physical controls plus touchscreen for the climate system. So again, the nice thing is it's always on. So you've got, again, these kind of nice knurled sort of like aluminium sort of like controls at the side for controlling the temperature. Some physical buttons down the side for shortcuts. And then in the centre, the touch screen. So for instance, ventilated or heated seats. So you just control them via touch. This touch screen here, which got a bit of haptic feedback. Same with the fan control, which is nice. And then your direction on the side here where you want the airflow to go. It's a really nice mixture of touchscreen and buttons, and it works really, really well. And that's what I mean. If you're of a certain age and you're buying this type of car, because let's be honest, you know, to afford a car like this, you are going to be of a certain age in some respects. Having too much touchscreen technology is going to put some people off. What Genesis have done is just enough. There's just enough sort of like modern tech there, blended into sort of like normal kind of controls that it won't scare you. And I think that's a really good thing that they've done. I love this open pore ash wood that's going on in the car as well, that goes across the cabin, and the design of it's nice. Although this Havana brown leather, I'm not quite sure, because I also see you own Havana brown plastic buttons as well. I'm not sure that's going to be everyone's cup of tea, but there we go. Good storage. You've got, you know, good cup holders here, which will take my big coffee flask, my water bottle, which has a cover going over them. We've got a wireless charging pad and connectivity under this little sliding hatch there. You've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, but it's not wireless, which I think is a little bit of an omission on a car of this stature. But there we go. There's a little button inside here. If you just click that, this opens up. You've got some storage in there. It's not huge, but it's all right. It's enough kind of pair for a pair of sunglasses, or for your, you know, for any sort of like little kind of snacks that you might want to eat along the way. That they all go in there, which is good. And then you've got your rotary your rotary controller for the transmission here, which we've seen before in Hyundais and Kias and Genesis as well, so that's quite good. You don't have the rotating crystal ball that you do get in the GV60, which is a bit of a shame, but still, it's nice and it's easy to use. The seats are worthy of a mention. Now, as I say, the car's got quite a few options on it. This one, it's got comfort pack, it's got the Napa leather, but these seats are beautifully comfortable, and depending obviously on the drive, there's a lot of adjustment on them. And what's nice on the driver's side is the squab, it doesn't pull out, it electrically adjusts, and it rolls up as you if you want more support. It sort of comes up from underneath and supports you underneath your thighs, and I love that. It's such a comfortable car to be in. When you go into the sport mode, you can feel the seat bolsters kind of clamp you a bit more, which is nice. They can hold you in position, which is lovely. But the driving environment itself, you know, in terms of comfort, you know, there's absolutely nothing to fault here. You've got good adjustment of the steering wheel. It's electrically adjustable. As I say, as much as I don't like the design of it, it's a nice wheel to hold. It's the right size. It's the right thickness. The controls fall easily to hand, and they've got a quality feel to them. So when you click on the controls, you do get this lovely action with them. Buttons down the door panel here, as you'd expect, things like for your mirror controls, electric windows, and then the memory seat button on the door. There's a great sound system in the car as well, which has to be commended. And then just your usual kind of little buttons down the side here for the illumination display up here, and then for switching the traction control system off. Which, why you would do that, I wouldn't know, but there you go, you can if you want to. You've also got the two paddles behind the steering wheel, and we'll see this when we drive it, to adjust the brake regen, and there's a lot to discuss on that one as well. So, in terms of the front cabin, absolute winner as far as I'm concerned. This is a really nice environment to sit in. Everything feels quality. The build quality is superb. You know, you just open and close it. It's got this lovely, just kind of a real proper thud to the doors that you'd expect from a quality luxury car. Nothing creaks, nothing rattles, nothing sort of like seems to jar against each other. It just works as far as I'm concerned. And as I say, I really like the way that they've managed to sort of like blend modernity and technology into a more kind of traditional looking cabin, as I say, because it's not going to frighten too many people away. No, you don't have the big wow of the Mercedes-Benz hyper screens, and maybe you could argue that something like the BMW's 8th generation operating system is a bit slicker than the standard one you would get in something like the Genesis. But I would say for 95% of the people that are going to be interested in buying a car like this, this has got everything that you would want, and it works really, really well. Now, as I said, best camouflaged charging flap in the business as far as I'm concerned. That one battery size, 87 kilowatt hours, which should see a WLTP range of around about 323 miles. So in reality, given how efficient we know that Hyundai, Kias and Genesis are, you're certainly looking at an excess of 250 miles out of this puppy. What's really clever about the car is it has dual motors, so one at the front, one at the back, and as I say, we'll talk about that in the performance and handling section a bit more. But what it will do is it will decouple the front motor to make it just operate off the rear one to make it more efficient, and it will only bring the front one back into play in terms of traction needed or in terms of acceleration that you need. So again, that's pretty clever as far as the car is concerned. It will take really high charging speeds as well, and it's got 800 volt architecture on the car as well. So if you find an ultra rapid charger, you can go from the benchmark 10 to 80% in around about 20 minutes. If you're charging from your home wall box, if you do have access to the 3-phase electricity and your home wall box is an 11 kilowatt one, well, the car will take that because it has an onboard 11 kilowatt charger, and to go from empty to full is around about 7.5 hours. If it's a more likely 7 kilowatt wall box that you have, then you're probably going to be looking at charging the car up in somewhere between sort of like 11.5 hours from flat to full. Now, one of the options you can have on the Electrified G80 is this, a solar roof. Obviously it's a cost option, which we'll go through in pricing in a second or two. But Genesis say that potentially you could see an extra, well, the press release says about 700 miles a year, but I would suggest that's probably going to be quite a high mileage user in a very sort of sunnier climate than we live in. But even if it was just sort of like, 50 to 100 miles extra a year, isn't that nice to know that you're harnessing that extra mileage from the power of the sun? So the Electrified G80 is all-wheel drive. It has two motors, one at the front, one at the back, and it delivers a combined output of 364 brake horsepower, which is a lot, and it's enough to get this car from rest to 60 miles an hour in 4.9 seconds. And it feels quick. You put your foot down, even in basic comfort mode, and it feels fast. And there are different driving modes. Down here, we've got all the different modes that you could want for. So in terms of the usual suspects, comfort's at sort of standard mode. We go into sport, and then all of a sudden the dials glow red and the seat kind of pinches you in at the side, and yeah, it feels much sharper on the throttle. But this car having a sport mode is a little bit like doing ballroom dancing in Reeboks. You can do it, I just don't know why you'd want to. What this car does really, really well is when you just flick it back to comfort, it just quietens everything down. And it has a real air of serenity about it. Too often and not, cars these days, car manufacturers, car engineers, they'll go, oh, well, we could dial in a little bit of sportiness and, put on, different suspension settings, stuff like that. Don't. That's not what this car's about. This car is a luxury executive saloon car. So let it get on with that job and let it do it really, really well, rather than trying to be a jack of all trades and master of none. Let it be a master of one. And I have to say, it is a master of that one. This is a biblically comfortable car to drive. There is literally no ambient noise coming from the outside of this car. It is serenely quiet. The way they've managed to suppress road noise and road imperfections is almost as good as the likes of a Rolls Royce. Now that beeping noise I'm going to tell you a little bit more about in a second. But for me, that is the absolute winning criteria of this car is how quiet, how smooth, and how comfortable the whole car feels. I absolutely love what Genesis have done with this car. There's no faux sportiness, there's no pretense at being anything other than just a really nice, comfortable luxury car. That's not to say it's devoid of any feel, because it has. There is a nice weight to the steering. As I say, I don't particularly like the design of the wheel, but the wheel itself is nice to hold. It's the right size, the right thickness, and you can feel what's going on underneath. Yeah. It's not quite the suspension of the likes of the Mercedes-Benz EQS, but we are talking about a percentile of a difference here. It's almost as good as that car, and that's, you know, £100,000 plus. You know, so that's a lot more expensive than this car, and it works with fancy sort of like air suspension and a different type of chassis setup. This is almost as good as it. There's a really bad section of the M25 by me that is just basic concrete, and as you drive along, all you get is this roar coming up from the bottom, and 9 out of 10 cars I drive on there, it's actually quite uncomfortable. This is the one car I would say, as well as that Mercedes I've driven on that section, where it's just, you can still talk at a whisper and you can hear your passenger. It is beautifully refined, this car. What else to talk about? Okay, well, as I say, the suspension's got a nice compliancy to it. There is a nice kind of feel to the car. There is a, you know, I'm not saying it wallows around and it's not, you know, it doesn't sort of like have a composure in corners, because it does. It's just that it's not a car you really want to throw around. But, you know, if you did need to get a bit of a hustle on, it's okay. It's actually all right. As I say, there's just a nice kind of sort of like controlled serenity about it that I really, really like. The brakes are good, and you can adjust the brakes, the various levels of the regeneration via these two paddles behind the steering wheel, as you can on most Hyundai, Kia and Genesis models. It also has an adaptive regeneration, so if you pull and hold this paddle on the left, you go into sort of like an I pedal. What the car will now do is it will use its GPS location, so the sat-nav GPS locator. It will know, for instance, if you're coming up to a roundabout, and it will know to apply a slightly heavier regen on the brakes as you're coming up to that roundabout. As you pull away again and you're on the open road and you lift your foot off, it will go back to allowing it to coast. Very, very clever. I mean, a lot of cars are now starting to have it, but I think Hyundai, Genesis and Kia are the ones that are really, really mastering the brake regen. I love the way that you can adjust it via these two paddles, or you can take it off completely. Or you can dial it right back, or you can have it sort of like, you know, just on level 3 for town and level 1, or completely off and you're on the motorway, whatever you decide. I love the way you can do it. It's nice and easy. It's not buried in the screen. It's just on these two paddles, and it's nice and easy to use. Now let me go back to that beeping noise that you heard earlier. There is a huge amount of safety systems on this car. And they do require you to delve into the screen to turn some of them off. Quite annoyingly so in some respects. Now, I'm maybe being a little bit of an old fuddy-duddy when it comes to this, but I've got a little bit of a beef with some of these electronic safety systems now, because I feel like some of the responsibility of driving is being taken away from the driver and put onto the car. And I don't think it should be that case. I think it should be the other way around. If you're driving a car, you should be responsible for it. So you should know. I was coming round the M25 earlier, and every time I crept above 70 miles an hour, I just kept bing, bing, bing. I couldn't figure out what it was, and that's what it is. There's a speed limit setting on it where it'll just chime at you all the time if you go above the speed limit for that road. Well, that should be my responsibility to understand that I'm doing that. You know, I'm going over that speed limit, not the car to tell me. I should know that I'm doing that. And I just feel that we're going to get to a point as drivers where does the responsibility stop? Well, I'm really sorry, officer. I'm sorry I was doing 77 miles an hour. I thought the car would tell me. You should really know yourself. Anyway, that's not something we can really labour at Genesis. But my point is, to go into to turn these safety systems off, you've got to delve into the screen, as is the case with a lot of these electric cars. And that's a little bit of a downside for me. But if you like them, that it has them. So you've got lane keep assist. As I say, you've obviously got your distance guided cruise control. You've got lane centering as well, which is the binging that was going on earlier because I wasn't in the middle of the lane. It was doing that. It's got an auto hold function on the brakes as well. There is the one safety system I do absolutely love on this car, and we've seen it on the likes of the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, and now Tesla are doing it as well. They've copied these guys are doing it, is the blind spot monitoring. So when you flick the indicator on, one of the gauges on that side where you're turning becomes a camera down the side of the car to show you what's in your blind spot. I think that is a brilliant safety system, especially if you spend your time in and around town or the city where you've got Deliveroo mopeds buzzing around everywhere, or cyclists, you know, up and down the side of you. Really, really clever system, and I love it. I love the fact that it does that. So that's good. That's a good thing. But going back to the actual drive, there is very little to actually fault here. In fact, I am struggling to fault it, other than just my beef about those safety systems. It does everything that it says it's going to do. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it's fast when you want it to be. Cleverly, as I said earlier, what will happen is at normal kind of cruising speeds, the front motor will decouple, so it will stop and it will just become a rear motor car to aid with efficiency, so you've not got the two motors churning all the time, and the front one only kicks back in when you need it for acceleration or, dare I suggest, traction. So again, very, very clever, the use of the twin motors, again to aid with the efficiency of the car. Driving position, absolutely perfect. I would suggest, I can't think of anyone that's going to struggle not to find a comfortable position in this car. The seats hold you well, there's just the right amount of support. As I say, you can adjust this front driver's seat so that there's more under thigh support. I've got good visibility all around me, even over the shoulder, because there's that little sort of window in the quarter light at the back there. It's a 6-light design, so you do have a little bit extra window at the back there. The dials are easy to see, everything's within easy reach of you as a driver, and as I say, there's just enough physical controls for things like turning on and off your air conditioning or adjusting the temperature, that it can be done without taking your eyes off the road. There's a head-up display on the car as well. It's not adjustable for its height, so I suggest taller drivers might struggle a little bit with that, but I must admit I find it absolutely fine to view from my point of view. Yeah, I think it's an absolute winner, this car. I absolutely love it, and I think Genesis, you know, they've just done so well in the short space of time that they've been around. It's another excellent product from them. It's brilliant. Okie doke, how much is all this going to cost you? Well, the Electrified G80 range starts at £65,805, so not exactly chump change. But this car has quite a few options on it, hence my notes here, so bear with me on this. This car has the Innovation Pack, the Comfort Seat Pack plus Executive Pack, a Convenience Pack, the Napa Leather Seats Pack, the Solar Roof Pack, and this metallic paint. Now that brings the cost of this particular test car to £80,215, and those prices are correct at time of filming. Now that is a lot of money. I'm not going to try and dissuade you that it's not. However, the equivalent Mercedes-Benz EQE with this style of spec in it is well over £10,000 more expensive than it. And bear in mind, you get a 7-year warranty with all the Genesis and the after-sales package that they normally come with. And it's not just that, it's the way that Genesis operate as a sales brand, as in they come to you, you have a personal assistant that helps you with everything in your ownership of a Genesis car. So whilst I'm going to stop short of calling it value for money, you do have to look at the overall picture when you think about the price of the G80. So competition for the Electrified G80. Well, the main rival is the one we've already mentioned, the Mercedes-Benz EQE. Now we've not driven it yet, but we are hoping to drive it very, very soon, and we'll be bringing that full road test as soon as we can. I would expect BMW will give us an i5 version of its new 5 Series when it hits the showroom floors soon enough. And I don't think Audi are probably going to be too far away. They won't want to be left out, so I can almost imagine a sort of like an e-tron, A6 e-tron, and the next generation of A6 that comes along as well, so I can imagine that. Tesla, well, of course, that's the ones that obviously we do have to consider with the Model S, because that's coming back in its revised form for 2023, and that's going to be a rival for the G80. But Jaguar, you see, Jaguar, there's the thing. I always think to myself, Jaguar were sort of like the real sort of like the old British sports saloon, executive saloon brand that just kind of stood apart from the Germans. Where are they? Well, they're really nowhere at the moment. They say they're going to be all electric by something like 2025. Well, that's only 2 years away, and we've yet to see anything other than the I-Pace from them, and that's 4 years old now. So I'm not going to hold my breath on that. Lexus, well, they've always been big fans of hybrids. They have got electric vehicles coming on stream, but they do stress that they think that hybrids do have some space in the world as well. So will they go down the route of giving us an all-electric sort of like, you know, large executive saloon? Who knows? Who knows? Maserati, well, there's another one as well. They're trying to sort of like bring back sort of like their sort of like sporting Italian heritage, and they gave us the old Ghibli as a sort of like this sort of size saloon car in petrol and diesel. But they're now chasing electrification. Will they do a revised Ghibli with an all-electric powertrain? Who knows? But at the moment, although it's a small market, it is there for the taking, and it's Genesis and Mercedes-Benz that are leading the charge, if you'll pardon the pun. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the Genesis Electrified G80. We like its styling, the comfort, its refinement, the performance, the warranty package, the safety systems, and the fact that it treads its own path. We don't like the rear seat space is tight for taller passengers. It has got quite a small boot in comparison with main rivals, and the price can creep up with some of the options. So, what are we to make of the Genesis Electrified G80? Well, if you watched our sneak peek with the car back in the summer, I said back then that I thought it was very brave of Genesis to even bring the car to market, because let's be honest with you, they're playing into quite a small market space. What they really could have done was just electrify the big GV80 SUV and gone to battle with Mercedes-Benz EQC, Audi's e-tron and BMW's iX, and actually no one would have batted an eyelid. In fact, if anything, it probably would have made them better off as a company. But they didn't. They didn't play it safe. They went in a slightly different direction. They decided to follow their own path and electrify the G80 saloon. And I like the fact that they've done that. No, the car doesn't have the big fancy Mercedes-Benz Hyperscreen or the BMW i7's rear television or fancy operating system or questionable design. But I think the type of buyer that will look at the G80 electrified is the type of buyer that wouldn't want that anyway. They're the type of people that don't really need to justify themselves to anyone anymore. And neither does this car. And I like that about it. Thank you ever so much for watching another episode of AutoEV. As always, please remember to make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below so you're notified of when our next video goes live. If you've enjoyed our road test review of the Genesis, please make sure you do give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments, good or bad. Let me know your thoughts on the car. What do you think about it? Is it a car that would interest you? Or do you think Genesis should have done a big electric SUV just like everyone else? Remember, we're across all social media platforms as well, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn, so please do give us a follow there because that helps us as well. And if this has just whetted your appetite for even more road test reviews or electric icons or van reviews or even motorbike reviews by our guest presenter Charlie Berman, then stick in our YouTube channel because there's now well over 100 videos from us that you can just waste away your afternoon with, and trust me, there's plenty more from us to come. In the meantime, all that remains for me to say is thank you once again for your support. I'll see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.